Good evening, traveler. You've wandered into myth-taken dreams, a place where timelines tangle, truths wobble, and bedtime stories rewrite history just enough to make it magical. Each tale unfolds from a library that never existed, where historians whisper with poets and facts arrive fashionably late. Tonight, we unspool another tale from the flickering archive because bedtime deserves a version of history that knows how to lie charmingly. So fluff your pillow, turn down the logic, and lean into the lore. Once upon a time, in a corner of the universe so far away that even space travel agents were like, "You really don't want to go there." There was a tiny, tiny little ball of dust and rock. This ball didn't know it was going to be anything special, mostly because it hadn't become anything yet. It was just sort of hanging around, minding its own business, like an uninvited speck of glitter at a wedding reception. Now, this little ball was in the middle of something quite extraordinary. You see, the whole universe was in a bit of a rush to get itself together. Stars were burning, planets were trying to decide if they were made of gas or rock, and everyone was wondering when the planets would get their invitations to the big cosmic party. This little ball, however, had been quietly drifting through space for a very long time, mostly because no one had explained to it that there were rules about becoming a planet. But, oh, one day, a day that wasn't quite a day because time hadn't really invented itself yet, something very important happened. A giant rock, much bigger than the ball of dust, came zooming through space like a cosmic bowling ball with no brakes. And smash, the rock collided with the little dust ball. Now, if you've ever accidentally bumped into a table, you know the feeling. You get a little shaken up, maybe some dust gets scattered, and you wonder why you didn't see it coming. Well, this wasn't a little table bump. This was a full-on cosmic crash. At first, the little ball was a bit stunned. It didn't know what had just happened. It had a moment of confusion, like when you've had too much cake and you're not quite sure if you're on a cloud or in a bakery. But as it got itself together, something started to happen. Pieces of it started flying off in all directions. Bits of rock and dust scattered, forming little mini-balls that spun around it like confused children at a playground. But as the dust settled, well, as much as space ever settles, the little ball realized something. It was bigger. It had just undergone the first step in what could only be called a radical transformation, like a caterpillar turning into a very rock and dust-filled butterfly. That big rock that hit it had knocked off some parts, but it also had added some. The little ball was now growing, slowly but surely. As the ball grew, it began to get a little hotter, because, apparently, growing involves a lot of intense heat, like a wizard who's just realized he's late for a meeting and turns the temperature up in a hurry. Inside the ball, things started to melt. Yes, melt. The inner parts of the ball turned into liquid metal, and the outside started to get very fiery and bubbly. It was like one of those giant volcanoes you see on TV, except it was the entire planet, and there were no volcanoes. Yet. Now, as things were heating up, the ball started to take shape. The heavy metals sank to the middle, as heavy metals are wont to do, being a bit gravitationally lazy, forming the core. The lighter stuff, which didn't want to get stuck at the bottom like that, stayed on top and formed the crust. This is the Earth we all know and love today. Well, the crust part, at least. The middle. That was still incredibly hot, but it was starting to cool down, which was good news for anyone planning on living there one day, assuming they could wait about 4.5 billion years. But the Earth wasn't done yet. Oh no, it had plans. Huge plans. First, it started getting some water. You might think that's simple, just add water, right? But no, Earth had to borrow some. Water didn't come out of nowhere like magic. Some of it was brought by icy comets, who just happened to be passing through and thought, Earth looks like it could use a bit of a rinse. A few comets collided with the Earth, bringing in huge amounts of ice. Over time, this melted into oceans, because, of course, The Earth needed oceans to be the sort of planet where cool things could swim around and form future fish. Once the water was there, Earth had another idea: atmosphere. The Earth decided to wrap itself up in a nice, cozy blanket of gases. This was really useful because it kept the heat from escaping, especially after it had worked so hard to get hot in the first place. The atmosphere also made it so that people, plants, and the occasional confused alien wouldn't immediately burn up if they wandered onto the surface. So, Earth thought, hey, let's make sure that's breathable for later, and started filling the air with oxygen. Which was, of course, very considerate, but also a tiny bit reckless since it allowed for fire. But more on that later. By this point, Earth was looking pretty good. It had oceans, land, an atmosphere, and enough heat to make sure you wouldn't want to spend too long on its surface without sunscreen. But it wasn't perfect yet. There was the small matter of life. And Earth, being a bit of an overachiever, was not content to just sit around and wait for things to evolve. So Earth said, how about I make a couple of cells? I'll see where that goes. And so Earth did. And with that, life began. Tiny little things floating about in the ocean, minding their own business, until they decided to get even bigger. And that, dear reader, is how the Earth came to be. A giant, rocky ball that crashed into things, melted, cooled down, and eventually became the place we all live, where there's pizza, occasionally way too much homework, and the occasional mysterious weather phenomenon. The end, or more accurately, the beginning, again.